It's December 10th, 2008. Picture a fancy apartment in Manhattan. Two sons are confronting their father. The market is in an absolute freefall, and his investors are panicking, trying to pull their money out. But there's a huge problem. There is no money. And Bernie Madoff, this absolute titan of Wall Street, just looks at his sons and says it. It's all just one big lie. You know that lie? It was a $50 billion Ponzi scheme, the biggest in history. And right there, in that moment, the clock starts ticking on an empire that was built on absolutely nothing. Look, Madoff's crime was a monster. It was an earthquake that just shook the entire financial world to its core. But was it the biggest scam ever? I mean, was it the most audacious, the most harmful? Well, that's what we're here to find out. In this explainer, we are going deep, putting the world's most infamous cons head to head. It's an official countdown to crown the undisputed king or queen of the swindler. Okay, so let's get into it. How do you actually do that? How do you compare, say, a teenage impersonator with a crypto billionaire, or a fake medical genius with a corporate spy who's moonlighting for the Russians? It's not just about the dollar amount, right? It's about the audacity, the impact, the sheer breathtaking nerve of it all. To do this properly, we need a system. We need some objective rules to score these giants of deception and really see who comes out on top. So here's how we're going to do it. We've come up with a 5-point scoring system. We're going to judge each scam on a scale of 0 to 10 in 5 separate categories. First up, total harm. What was the real economic and social damage? Second, victim count and reach. How many people got hurt and how wide did they cast their net? Third, audacity and engineering. I mean, how bold and how complicated was the scheme itself? Fourth, duration. How long did they actually get away with it? And finally, historical and media impact. How much did this story just get burned into our collective memory? The scam with the highest total score? Well, that's our number 1. With the rules in place, let the countdown begin. Kicking us off at number 7 is a man whose cons were so charismatic, so unbelievably cinematic, that they literally became a Hollywood legend. We're talking a blockbuster movie starring Leonardo DiCaprio. His story is proof that sometimes all you really need to pull off an incredible scam is a little bit of confidence and the right uniform. Frank Abagnale's story is just a masterclass in what we call social engineering. As a teenager, he figured out that a uniform is basically a skeleton key to public trust. He said in an interview with Jordan Harbinger that as a kid he had no fear of being caught and no fear of consequences. He didn't really plan things out, he just did them. He saw a Pan Am crew one day, thought, hey, that uniform would help me cash bad checks, and boom. It was like night and day. He said a uniform was so powerful, that's all they saw. He wasn't just some kid passing a bad check anymore, he was a pilot. That's a perfect example of authority bias. And this wasn't just a one-time thing, it was a 5-year spree where between the ages of 16 and 21, he posed as a pilot, a doctor, and a lawyer, all while leaving this trail of fake checks behind him. Alright, let's get to the scorecard. For total harm, Abagnale gets a 3 out of 10. Now, why so low? Well, because while he did steal a lot of money, he was mainly hitting corporations and banks, not wiping out the life savings of regular people. Victim count gets a 4, for pretty much the same reason. But for audacity, oh, that's an easy, perfect 10 out of 10. The nerve of a teenager convincing the world he was a pilot, a doctor, and a lawyer is just, it's off the charts. Duration gets a solid 5 for those 5 years of deception. And finally, historical and media impact gets a huge 9, all thanks to that iconic movie, Catch Me If You Can. So that gives Frank Abagnale a grand total of 31 points, and that sets our baseline. Now, our next contender, they took a global crisis and turned it into a $250 million payday. Leaning in our number 6 spot is a scam that is just as cynical as it gets. During the peak of the COVID-19 pandemic, right? The world's in lockdown, kids are in need, and a group of criminals saw it not a crisis, but a golden opportunity. They took advantage of a federal program that was designed to feed 100 kids and stole hundreds of millions of dollars. This is the story of feeding our future. The way this fraud worked is actually kind of brilliant in its simplicity. So the US government has this federal child nutrition program to help feed low-income kids. During the pandemic, to get aid out faster, the government relaxed the rules. And this Minnesota-based nonprofit, Feeding Our Future, and their partners, they saw their chance. According to the Department of Justice, they set up over 250 fake food distribution sites all over Minnesota. They submitted invoices for meals that were never served to kids who didn't exist. They even created fake attendance rosters with totally made-up names. The scale was just wild. over $250 million stolen from taxpayers. And the red flags, they were almost funny. The New York Times reported that one site in a small town claimed it was feeding 6,000 children a day. That's more kids than even lived in that entire zip code. Time for the official score. For total harm, Feeding Our Future gets a very high 8. They didn't just steal money, they stole resources that were meant for hungry kids during a global health crisis. For victim count, we're giving it a 7, because this was a fraud against every single US taxpayer. Audacity is a 9, and the exploding a pandemic relief program at this scale is just unbelievably brazen. Duration gets a 3, it was a relatively quick hit, and media impact gets an 8 for making national headlines. That brings Feeding Our Future to a total of 35 points, knocking Frank Abagnale into second place. Now our next scam takes us from a Minnesota nonprofit to the glitz and glamour of Hollywood, where an aspiring actor decided his best role ever would be playing a financial genius. Arriving at number 5, we've got a story that is straight out of Tinseltown. It's your classic Ponzi scheme, but with a Hollywood twist. A struggling actor used the magic of the silver screen and the promise of these exclusive deals with Netflix and HBO to con his own friends and family out of hundreds of millions of dollars, all to fund a lavish lifestyle that was just as fake as his movie contract. So Zachary Horowitz, who used the stage name Zach Avery, wasn't landing any big roles, so he basically just created one for himself. He told investors he had this brilliant business plan. He'd buy the distribution rights to movies and then license them to giants like Netflix and HBO for a massive profit. As people got detailed, the psychology here was all about social proof. His friends literally said, "We all looked up to Zach so much." Another one said, "Whatever Zach wanted to do, all of his friends followed." He backed up his pitch with what the DOJ later called forged contracts and fake emails that looked totally real. But it was just a classic Ponzi scheme. Use new investor money to pay off the old ones. He raised at least $650 million and used it to buy a $5.7 million home in LA and basically fund his image as a successful Hollywood producer. Okay, before we reveal Horowitz's score, let's just pause for a second and look at how the financial damage has been skyrocketing. This chart shows the insane growth in money stolen. We started with Abagnale's check fraud, down in the single millions. Then Feeding Our Future jumped us up to $250 million, and now Horowitz raising $650 million. The stakes are just getting higher and higher with each rank. So where does that put him on our leaderboard? Well, Horowitz gets a 7 for total harm, a 6 for victim count, a 7 for audacity, a 6 for duration, and a strong 8 for media impact because of the Hollywood angle. That brings his grand total to 38 points, locking him into the number 5 spot. And now for our number 4. We're heading to the heart of Silicon Valley, the land of disruption and big ideas. Our next scammer was celebrated as the next Steve Jobs. You know the look, the signature black turtleneck. She promised to completely revolutionize healthcare with just a single drop of blood. But her world-changing technology? It was built on a foundation of lies that put millions of real patients at risk. So this is the whole thing right here, the huge gap between the pitch and the reality. Elizabeth Holmes started Theranos with a promise that honestly sounded like science fiction. She had a machine called the Edison that could supposedly run hundreds of blood tests on just a tiny pinprick of blood. It was this beautiful, powerful vision that brought in hundreds of millions in investment and landed her on the cover of all the big magazines. The reality? According to the US Department of Justice, which charged her with massive fraud, the tech just never worked. The company was secretly using machines from its competitors to run its tests, all while giving patients results that were inaccurate and potentially really dangerous. It was a complete fantasy that risked people's lives just for the sake of a good story. Let's see the scores for Theranos. For total harm, it gets a 9. This wasn't just about money. This was a serious public health risk. For victim count, an 8 for the thousands of patients and investors who were duped. For audacity, a perfect 10. I mean, to fool world leaders, top scientists, and major investors for that long is just astounding. Duration gets a 7, and for historical and media impact, it's another perfect 10. The story has created books, documentaries, award-winning TV series, you name it. That gives Theranos a massive 42 points. And speaking of astounding audacity, our next scam takes us out of Silicon Valley biotech and drops us right into the world of international espionage. Kicking up our top 3 is a scandal that seriously reads like a spy novel. It involves one of Germany's most famous tech companies, a $2 billion hole in its finances, and a top executive who just vanished, only to pop up again as a key player from Moscow's intelligence services. This is the unbelievable story of Wirecard. Okay, so on the surface, Wirecard was this big German success story, a fintech giant listed on the super prestigious DAX stock index. But behind closed doors, it was a total house of cards. The company claimed it had 1.9 billion euros in cash sitting in accounts in the Philippines. But when the auditors from EY finally took a look, they found out the money just wasn't there. It didn't exist. The CEO, Marcus Braun, was arrested, but the real story is the CLO, Jan Marsalek. According to reporting from Frontline, Marsalek wasn't just some white-collar criminal. He was an asset for Russia's FSB. He was allegedly spying from Moscow for years. After the company collapsed, he fled and is now a fugitive hiding out in Moscow. This wasn't just about cooking the books. This was international espionage. For that incredible combination, Wirecard gets a 9 on total harm, 8 on victim count, a perfect 10 on audacity, 8 on duration, and a 9 on impact, for a grand total of 44 points. Our runner-up, just missing that top spot, is a story that basically defines the Wild West era of cryptocurrency. It's about a supposed genius. You know, the guy in the t-shirt and shorts who built a multi-billion-dollar crypto exchange, became the face of the entire industry, and then watched it all just go up in flames in a couple of days, revealing an $8 billion black hole where customer money was supposed to be. This is the epic collapse of FTX. So, FTX was sold to the public as one of the safest, most reliable places you could trade crypto. Its founder, Sam Bankman-Fried, was everywhere, a total media darling. But the mechanics behind the scenes were a complete disaster. FTX was secretly taking billions of dollars of customer funds and funneling them to its sister trading firm, Alameda Research. Now, a hedge fund, to put it simply, is a private investment group that uses really aggressive, super risky strategies to try and make huge profits for its wealthy clients. So FTX was taking regular people's money and just gambling with it through Alameda. When the market went south, the money was gone. Sanction Scanner reports there was an estimated $8 to $10 billion in missing customer funds, which makes it the biggest crypto fraud in history. The impact was a massive regulatory crackdown. That means government agencies like the SEC started making and enforcing much stricter rules to try and stop this from ever happening again. Alright, let's go to the final leaderboard before we reveal our number 1. For its just incredible financial devastation, FTX scores a perfect 10 for total harm. Victim count gets a 9 for the millions of users all over the world. Audacity is a 9, duration a 7, and its impact on the entire crypto industry is another perfect 10. That gives FTX a grand total of 45 points, just barely squeaking past Wirecard to take the number 2 spot. And this all sets the stage for our number 1. A scam so massive, so long-lasting, and so psychologically devastating that it is still the benchmark that all other financial frauds are measured against. And here we are, at number 1. The biggest scam in the world. This is the man who perfected the Ponzi scheme. He turned it into a decades-long masterpiece of deception. He built this aura of being an untouchable genius, preying on trust, friendship, and community to steal billions and billions of dollars, leaving behind this trail of financial ruin and personal tragedy that we still feel today. The undisputed king of cons, Bernie Madoff. What made Madoff the absolute master was how he manipulated psychology. His pitch wasn't about flashy promises, it was about exclusivity. As Barron's reported in this now infamous 2001 article, his motto was "Don't ask, don't tell," and that created this irresistible mystique. He perfected what's called affinity fraud, targeting wealthy Jewish communities and charities, people who trusted him because he was one of them. For decades, he ran the simplest Ponzi scheme imaginable. No trades were ever actually made. Money from new investors was used to pay off the old ones. While the fake statements showed gains of $64.8 billion, the real cash losses were a staggering $17 to $20 billion. And the fraud ran for possibly 40 years. The aftermath was just biblical. For all of this, Madoff scores a perfect 10 in every single category: harm, victims, audacity, duration, and impact, for a perfect score of 50 out of 50, the only scam in our entire countdown to achieve absolute perfection in deception. So, what have we learned from all this? Well, if you look at all 7 of these cases, a really clear set of warning signs starts to emerge. First, promises of guaranteed high returns with very little risk. That was the core of Bernie Madoff's pitch, returns that were just impossibly steady that defied the market. Second, complicated or secretive strategies. Madoff told his investors, "Don't ask, don't tell," and Theranos hid its failing technology behind a wall of so-called trade secrets. Third, a lack of official paperwork. Remember Zach Horowitz? He used forged Netflix and HBO contracts to create the illusion that everything was legit. And finally, using social proof and affinity. Horowitz's friends followed him because they trusted him, and Madoff built his entire empire on the trust within his own community. You know, in the end, what this whole countdown really shows is that while the methods change, you go from fake checks to fake crypto, the basic psychology of a scam is timeless. They always prey on our trust, our ambition, our fear, and our desire for a shortcut. The players and the platforms will always change, but the game stays the same. The best defense is skepticism, doing your homework, and just remembering the oldest piece of advice there is. If it seems too good to be true, it almost certainly is. The only question left is, who's going to be the next person to try and claim the crown?